Welcome, everyone, to the spring semester season finale of Sports Scene. It's finally here. Can't believe it's coming to an end. Season 11, episode 12. I'm Trevor Denton with our three panelists, three people I love to work with, but more than that, I love to argue with these three people. Tyler Meyerly, Julia Adams, and Reagan Griffin Jr., RG2. How's everyone doing on this last week of classes?
Fabulous.
Great. Excited to argue.
For what it's worth, I hate arguing with you, Trevor.
You're arguing with me? We did 10 hours of the draft together, Reagan. Why are you turning your back on me like that?
I'm playing with you, bro.
All right, put me on your podcast. I want that.
Man, we can make that happen.
All right. Well, we'll get things going right away. We'll have some time to reflect on me, Julia, and Tyler's time here at Annenberg Media Sports. This will be our last sports scene. Reagan, this will be your one of your many times on sports scene, only a freshman, really rubbing that in our faces. But we'll have time to reflect on that later on in the show. But first, let's get some breaking news out of the way. USC rising junior guard Elijah Weaver last night announced on Twitter that he would be entering the transfer portal. Kind of a shocking decision. A key player on last year's team, a key returning player. Do you guys think he made the right decision? We'll start with you, Tyler. I know you enjoyed interviewing him over the past year.
Yeah, it was a little unexpected. I think when the season ended, we didn't expect, at least not Elijah, to enter a transfer portal. It kind of makes you wonder where it came from, what set that up, and where he'll end up. I thought he was a great key player that came in at clutch moments, especially towards the end of the season. So we will, I think, collectively do our investigative work.
Yeah, still very new news. Don't really know why or how this happened. But Reagan, I know that you were on the men's basketball team, beat all season for Annenberg. So what do you kind of know about this situation? And do you have any inkling or speculation on why he decided to enter the transfer portal?
Yeah. Again, this is purely speculation on my part, but I do notice in terms of how the team's sort of social construct was constructed. You had Nick and Jonah, who kind of had their senior thing going. It was their last season. They'd been through the 4 years entirely together. Then you had the other dynamic of the youth, right? Isaiah Mobley, Onyeka Okongwu, Ethan Anderson, Kyle Sturdivant. They were all freshmen. They kind of had their own clique. And I feel like Elijah might have been left out in that, right? He's the only guy kind of in his range of age on the team. Again, that's speculation on my part, but I feel like there's a chance that he might have felt left out of the group dynamic a little bit, and that might have been a factor in terms of his decision to transfer. To answer your question, though, in terms of it being the right decision, that's ultimately up to him, right? So if he felt like he could have better opportunities elsewhere, then that's for him to decide. And I respect that decision. I'm sure we all respect that decision, but it definitely is a hurt piece for USC's team next year, because he was going to be the primary isolation scorer on the perimeter for the team.
Yeah, my
sense are on the team. Whose fault is that, though?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
If there are chemistry issues, different cliques on the team, not everyone fitting in, like whose fault is that? Is that Coach Enfield's fault? Is that the player's fault? Is that the senior's fault for not bringing him into the fold? Who's to blame there?
I'm not sure if it's anyone's fault necessarily. It's just the fact that you had an age difference, right? So Elijah Weaver was a sophomore last year, so he'd already been in the team. But a lot of the people that he came up with, Kevin Porter, those guys went to the NBA, right? So then you had the people who had already been there, had their own established rapport. Jonah and Nick, they had their own thing. And then you had people that were coming in completely new. So he was kind of left in purgatory in terms of the social construct of the team. And so that's not necessarily anyone's fault per se. I think it's just how the thing played out.
Julie, I know I cut you off.
No worries. I was just saying my 2 cents here that I bet Andy Enfield is probably pretty bummed today, because Elijah was going to be a big guy for him going into next season, getting with the loss of Jonah and Nick. And so, of course, this doesn't for sure say he's leaving, because he could enter the transfer portal and then decide to stay at USC. But it's definitely a bummer in general to show that decision, was there and that he might be leaving.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for him and Andy Enfield's conversation when he announced that he would be transferring, just to kind of hear how that went down, hear how much Enfield tried to pitch him on coming back. But either way, we don't know what happened behind closed doors, but we do know it'll be a major blow for a USC basketball team that's returning a lot of talent, including Isaiah Mobley and adding his brother Evan Mobley. So we'll see how much of a crushing blow that is as far as USC's tournament aspirations going forward. So it's fitting Elijah Weaver's leaving USC, me, Julia, Tyler are leaving USC pretty soon here in the next couple of weeks. And Austin Jackson and Michael Pittman last week moved on from USC. They both got drafted early on in the 2020 NFL draft, very highly regarded. Austin Jackson went 18th overall to the Dolphins. Pittman 34th overall to the Colts. He's going to be playing with your guy, Tyler, Phillip Rivers in Indianapolis. So the question is, who's in the better landing spot, Michael Pittman or Austin Jackson? We'll start with you, Tyler.
I'm going to go not just for geographical reasons, but Jackson to Miami. Obviously, anytime you could get drafted there in the first round, that's going to be a better landing spot than maybe somewhere farther down in the draft. But I just think for a big guy who's quick, he's quick on his feet, but to be able to develop at that tackle position with a new quarterback, that's going to be beneficial to him as a player, in terms of rookie with rookie, which you might not get with Pittman right off the bat.
As much as I love Miami, man, it's a beautiful place to be, but it has to be Michael Pittman, right? We saw what Michael Pittman was able to accomplish when he was the future receiver on USC's team last year. He was fighting through double teams, still going up and grabbing those catches at the highest point. Imagine what he's going to be able to do with T.Y. Hilton on the opposite side of him. Now he gets a one-on-one matchup with an inferior defensive back. He's going to take advantage of that full-fledged, man. He's going to have a killer season this season. He's going to have a killer seasons for years to come. Michael Pittman is in a perfect situation in Indianapolis right now.
You said it, Reagan, catching passes at the highest point, and he might need to do that a couple times with Phillip Rivers as quarterback in that first year. It's not easy for an old guy to adjust to a new offense, especially when this might be his 1 year. Pittman has a better chance down the stretch with a new quarterback like Easton.
And Pittman struggles with speed and separation. We know that's already something that we saw at his USC career. So I think coming in and trying to be that main guy is going to be a problem for him. While as Austin Jackson is going to have a better opportunity to do that at the Dolphins. And plus he's coming with a younger quarterback, Tua, just drafted as well. And so it makes more sense that Austin Jackson ended up in a better spot just because he gets to develop a relationship with Tua and who same age as him and really, capitalize on that.
Guys, we go to USC where some people graduate with cushy jobs. They're like an analyst or something. They get paid $100K. They get the gym membership, the signing bonus, the company car. And then there's us in the journalism field where we're going to have to go to Boise, Idaho and really learn on the fly, learn in the school of hard knocks and get paid in pennies. And I feel like that's the difference between Austin Jackson and Michael Pittman Jr. Obviously, no one's getting paid in pennies. But Austin Jackson is going to a terrible situation in Miami. They had the worst offensive line in all of football last year, gave up 58 sacks. They drafted Tua, but we don't know about Tua's health right away. This is still very much an unknown as a franchise.
He's good. He was clear. We heard it from like 70 different people before the
I don't know if I buy that yet. I don't know if I buy that. Even if Tua is cleared, though, he's going to have to play behind the worst offensive line in football. They give up 58 sacks, like I said. Now, Austin Jackson is going to be expected to be the leader of that group. And frankly, he's a bit raw. He's not complete as a prospect yet. We saw him struggle at times at USC, especially in the Holiday Bowl, where A.J. Epinesa, a second-round pick, was toasting him left and right down the field, ended up injuring Keaton Slovis. So I think Austin Jackson's going to look back way less fondly at the beginning of his career. It's going to be a lot of learning on the fly than Michael Pittman Jr., who gets to play with great skill players, T.Y. Hilton, Jonathan Taylor, and a legendary quarterback in Phillip Rivers.
I just think that same thing, the same argument applies that you're saying for Jackson applies for Pittman. He's going to have a pretty rough season too. I mean, it's really tough to be that younger guy working with an older quarterback who's just going to
be counted on to be the number one guy.
Going to be hard on him.
But he's not going to be counted on to be the number one guy. They already have a number one guy in T.Y. Hilton, and they have other skill players who can pick up the load. All Pittman has to do is perform in the situations that he can. He's only going to have 40 or 50 catches. We know the hands he has. He doesn't have issues with dropping passes. So I feel like he's going to have a situational role. Austin Jackson's going to have to step up as the anchor of the offensive line right away,
But that's going to be a true test for him, and he's going to have to rise for the occasion in order to do that. And I'd honestly, as a player, rather be in that position than be the second kind of plug-and-play guy that Pittman's going to be for the Colts.
Exactly. Sometimes it's harder to make more noise in a crowded room. So when you have these many, great wide receivers on that Indianapolis offense, but then you've got Jackson down in Miami, who he's their guy. He's going to be that guy who makes Tua look better. That's going to be what the Dolphins are going to want to see.
Well, I just think when teams turn on the tape and they study up before they play the Dolphins, they're going to say, go after Austin Jackson. He's green. He's a rookie left tackle. Let's feast on him. Like if they play the Houston Texans, G.D.O.A.T's going to say, I want to go after that guy. 60 plays in this game. I want to toast that guy. No one's going to have really the same reaction to Pittman. He's going to fly under the radar. That's going to allow him to get some catches. That's going to allow him to make big plays in this offense because he's not the feature option. He's not the only option for the Colts. I also think the Colts have a great foundation in place, a great coach, and they could be Super Bowl contenders this year. So you combine the situational role he's going to play, possibly playing for a Super Bowl contender in Indianapolis. And I think it's a fantastic situation.
I mean, that's a great point. Frank Wright is actually a former Eagles coach. He was the offensive coordinator for that team that won the Super Bowl, right? And I remember that guy loves to push the ball downfield. He likes to make plays. He likes to allow his receivers to make those plays. Michael Pittman is the perfect archetype for that sort of offense. I think it's going to be a match made in heaven.
Yeah, well, they're not going to get those down the field passes from Phillip Rivers. You know who's going to get those passes? Whatever defense they're playing against. So we'll have to see. You know, I love Phillip Rivers early on, but he is aged.
He is aged.
He's older. He's lost some juice, but they still have another option behind him, Jacob Eason, who they got in the 4th round, and he's got a lot of juice on his arm. He's going to be able to learn from Phillip Rivers. You could potentially see that pairing, that Pac-12 pairing between Jacob Eason and Michael Pittman Jr. for 10, 15 years down the line. But yeah, we're a little undecided on that. But let's go ahead and move on to our next question. Another thing I know that we're very undecided on, and that's when we think college sports will return. Today, Dr. Fauci said that he doesn't think sports should return anytime soon, or doesn't think that they will. So let's dive in on this. How would you feel if college sporting events, specifically college football games, the biggest college sporting events, were played without fans? Let's start with you, Tyler.
I think they're essential. I not only to the morale of the team, but having fans is a, if not the biggest part about college football. Think about college game day, the tailgating experience, the fans, they don't make college arenas the way they do for them to be empty. I mean, that's going to play a big part. And unless you're like an awful team that's used to not having any fans, that could make or break the kind of games you end up playing.
I mean, yes, I do agree that fans add to the game and they're important, but they're not vital to the play of the game. And there's a bigger issue here that goes beyond fans. And to give you guys a stat, there's actually $4 billion at risk here in just the Power 5 conferences if college football doesn't happen next season. So with that said, it's so important that football happens no matter what, or we'll see these athletic departments crash and burn. And that, to me, is more important than if there's fans or not in the stadium.
College sports can't be played without fans. Simply put, they cannot be played without fans. It would be totally off from what we're used to be seeing. It would destroy the atmosphere. When I think of college football, I think about the players. Yes, I think the game yet.
But let me ask you, are they vital to the play of the game?
Home field advantage, though. In an LSU Alabama
game, vital to the actual play of the game, Trevor.
Vital. It is absolutely vital to the play of the game. When you're talking about like an Alabama LSU game,
they're not.
It matters so much who has the home field advantage, right? You're completely losing that. You would be effectively playing scrimmages at that point. I don't want to see like spring games.
Home field advantage is important. I agree with you. And it definitely makes a difference in who potentially wins the game, but it doesn't stop play from going on. I know fans are enjoyable. It's enjoyable to have the fans there for the players. They love the noise of the crowd, but it's not essential. And I think
that's a third down with no defense chance. I mean, that's wrong. That's wrong.
I'm going to say this. It can be played without college fans, but it's going to suck. It's going to suck. It's going to be a terrible product because when we think about the greatest moments of college football history in the past, right, or even in recent history, right, when we think about the return of Alabama, right, when the Auburn guy, he returned the kickoff for the touchdown against Alabama to win the game. It was the fans that made that moment so it's spectacular. You see the camera literally shaking because the fans are screaming so loud. Going to the USC games last season, I was a freshman, so I'm not covering them. I'm sitting in the student section. That's the experience that's encompassing with college football. You can't see that without the fans. I'm with you 100%, Trevor. You can't think of college. When it comes to pro sports, sure, maybe you can make that happen because these guys are actually playing for dollars.
What do you guys
think about college sports? It's the raw, visceral passion that comes along with it, and that passion comes from both the players on the field, but it's fueled by the fans in the stadium.
There's passion, but I will also say, as much as it will suck to play without fans in the stands, can you imagine how much the months of August to January 1st will suck without any football being played? So yes, you lose money from not having fans in the stands, but we have TV. You can be a fan and now watch football at home, and I would much rather have sports resume on track, on schedule, instead of sitting back and waiting for fans to go.
So you're willing.
There's too many sports in spring if we push football to spring.
Also, all the other sports will get cut if football doesn't happen. All of the other sports that we see in play, basketball, they don't generate any revenue for the schools. Basketball in some cases, but not at USC, for example. So if you look at that, all of the other sports will likely have, get tossed, especially some of the smaller ones like rowing, things like that. So the athletic department as a whole will completely crash and burn if we don't have a football season.
My mom makes these amazing things called chicken poppers, right? She uses all this seasoning. She uses all these things in it to make it great. Now, if my mom told me, Reagan, I can make chicken poppers tonight, but I don't have all the ingredients necessary to make it like I usually make it. You know what I'm telling her? Don't make the poppers. Wait till you get everything back so I can have it the way I love it. Wait till we get everything back to the way we were used to.
But what if you have to starve?
Here.
I'd rather starve.
My
I'd rather starve.
You can always delay the season until the spring and then start the next season in the fall. Still give guys a chance to show on tape what they can do for NFL scouts. I just don't want to watch college football if there are no fans. Like I think I'm one of the biggest college football fans in the world. I feel confident saying that. I live and breathe this sport. This is what I look forward to every year. But I need fans in the stands to make the sport what it is.
Bigger than you,
That's where all the momentum shifts come from. That's where all the momentum shifts come from. If we have to wait and delay it until the spring, I'd be fine with that, maybe next summer, and then pick up the next season in the fall. I think that could be an easy solution to make up some of that TV revenue that would be lost in the fall. But I think when you're talking about college football, more so than any other sport, it is made by the fans. That's where all of the energy.
This isn't a forever thing, Trevor. College sports cannot exist without fans. But can college sports exist without fans for fall of 2020? I'm sorry, but be the biggest fan you can be at home, because the bigger picture is logistically you cannot push back every other sport just because you want football to be played in the spring. And then what? You have 2 weeks to get ready for the NFL draft?
There's something we're ignoring here, though. So you're saying it's okay that for fans, it's too unsafe for them to go to games, right? Because it's too big of crowds. But you're willing to put athletes' safety on the line.
Yes, because they're confined. They're confined in their dorms and they're only practicing.
Fine. They could be coming from all over the country with their families, going all these different places and then coming back together and playing on a football field, teams playing from across the country in Alabama and USC. You're risking them getting the coronavirus. So you're willing to put their safety on the line, but not the fans. I don't really get that.
But this is 4 months from now. And by that point, testing is going to be readily available, and they're going to be able to test these guys on a regular basis and test the management and test the media people that come in for the games. Having a crowd of people is just uncontrollable at this point. And I just think in this case, the athletic department and just the effect that this would have on players' future careers is just a bigger issue here than fans get to watch the game from the stadium.
All right, so we're a little undecided on whether fans are essential for college sports. I think they absolutely are. I liked Reagan's analogy with the chicken poppers. I want it to be perfect. I love this sport so much that I want it to be presented like I know it and love it. I want it to be perfect. I want it to come back full force, and I feel like the fans are just as big of a part of it. I mean, literally, you have Texas A&M. They call their crowd the 12th man for a reason. It's literally a 12th man on the field. You see that all across the country. But we got to wrap up that debate. We're undecided if fans are essential for college sports, and apparently high school prospects are undecided if college basketball is essential for their development as basketball players. Just this week, the third high-profile high school recruit chose the G League Pathway program over college basketball. This is now becoming a trend that we can't ignore. So, guys, do you think that the G League Pathway program could be a legitimate threat to NCAA basketball, March Madness, all this stuff as we know it?
I'm such a traditionalist. Like, why can't we just keep doing the things the way things have been done? And I think
it's not fair.
Oh my goodness, life isn't fair, Reagan. I just think that the NCAA, especially with basketball, is so historied that long term, I don't think it's going to be a threat.
Reagan, go in.
The thing is, right, the NCAA basketball as we've known it, I'll be blunt. It's been a scam. It has been capitalizing on athletes who did not need that platform to advance their career. When we think about the Zion Williamsons, the RJ Barretts, right? Those guys of the world, they don't need NCAA basketball. What it does is they take them in, use the platform that they've already established for themselves, and profit off of that, right? There are going to be guys who need it. When we think about the Obi Toppins, the Tyrese Halliburtons of the world, they're always going to be NCAA basketball for those guys who need to go and establish for themselves.
Wait,
but guys who can already ascend to the NCAA, of course. Guys who can already ascend to the NBA, of course you don't need the NCAA. You never did. You never did.
But I thought the question that we're being asked here is if it's going to be a threat to the NCAA. And it is going to be a threat because even looking at Daishen Nix, 5-star recruit, now the UCLA head coach is having to ask himself how he is going to learn these top prospects because of the G League. So that's the question we're asking here. We're not asking if it's more beneficial for these players or what. We're asking if it's a threat to the NCAA.
It is, and it should be.
Jalen Green, he just signed a contract worth over $500,000. How can you lure a player into any NCAA team if you're being offered a contract like that? Like, that's just ridiculous. So what we're going to see in the future is these NCAA teams are going to lose these top talent to the G League, which is, in my opinion, not a great thing because college should be most important.
Well, why isn't it a great thing? I think it's absolutely a great thing. If you're coming out of high school, maybe you don't come from a lot of money. Maybe you do. It doesn't really matter. You're getting $500,000 potentially and a college scholarship, which honestly, we talk about the value of getting an education for basketball players is really non-existent, especially for the ones that go one and done. That's a semester and some change of college work when you're mainly focused on working out and getting ready for basketball season. Most of the time, they probably don't even go to all of these classes, and you're certainly not getting anywhere near a degree versus having the flexibility to get your degree at any time, maybe at a stage in your career where it's more useful for you and you're not 18 years old and you have some perspective. Maybe when you go back to school when you're 26 and you have more perspective on the situation, study, and you actually want to go to school. So I think the educational value of the G League program is better than you get in the NCAA. The money is obviously better, and you can start capitalizing on your likeness. We're seeing more and more of these high school athletes become celebrities. It's happened with LeBron James Jr. It happened with the Ball brothers. We're seeing more and more of an explosion of that. Now they can actually capitalize on that. This isn't necessarily a new trend. We've seen players go the international route, but now they can actually stay in the United States. And with the concerns about the coronavirus, guys, they're not going to want to go and play in a league in China like Emmanuel Mudiay did a couple of years ago. So this is a great alternative. It kind of blends the college basketball experience. I'm sure they'll have great access to coaches, great access to facilities that they would get at a UNC or a Duke, and you don't have to go overseas. I think it's perfect. I think it'll overtake the NCAA in popularity. Within the next 15 years, I think it'll be more popular than the NCAA.
See, and I don't see it lasting that long. So the reason I said I don't see it being a threat is because this is so new. I think logistically the G League they're going to realize that maybe it was working and it was really shiny for those star players for a couple years. But after a while, players are going to see the long-term benefit of playing in a college system. And the other thing is, Trevor, you keep mentioning that this professional program allows for college scholarships to go back. But the thing is, the NBA, the chances of being a 10-year plus player to where you can get life experience and don't really need to go back to college, those things are so low. The NBA is one of the leagues where the guys do not know what to do when they get out of the league. So chances are more guys are going to need the college experience, the college education, and the college networking to get them somewhere. You're not going to get networking somewhere in these international places that half these G leagues are that you're going to get that the NCAA provides you in the U.S.
How many of these guys are going to go back?
These basketball players, Tyler, you talk to all of them. How much focus do you think is put on school and networking while they're at USC? What percentage do you think is focused on that versus basketball? I mean, be honest.
But it comes naturally. You're networking while you're playing.
They're not networking while they're playing. At least they're not focused on it. You can do all of those things and focus on basketball while you're in the G League and get more of an education in basketball if that's what you're going to come to be focused on anyways. And then for the guys that do value a college education, they have the option. It's all about having the option. Right now, guys
Trevor,
off their likeness, and a lot of guys are kind of forced to take classes they don't want to take at a time in their life when they're not focused on getting an education, right? I think that's wrong.
How developmental for you was your freshman year? How developmental for you was your freshman year?
It was very developmental, but I wasn't focused on playing one.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But it's not as developmental if you're playing a sport and you're facing a full-time job.
1 year in college will do, the world for these guys. Just getting to meet people, getting skills. Yes, a lot of most of them are really smart. We know that. I mean, all of them are really smart. I'm not saying most. I'm sure, some don't value school as much. But these guys are really smart guys, and they want to be able to learn these skills in college. And a year does make a difference.
They don't if so many are going and jumping to this G League program.
Okay, well, let's face it. Ball jumped into the G League because he didn't want to be babysat by his dad in LA anymore, the same way he saw Lonzo. So it's not like everybody's doing it for beneficial reasons.
Here, let's not fail to look at these guys like they're normal people, right? Because for you and me, of course, the freshman year is going to be extremely developmental, but they're living on a different stratosphere than we are. These guys are training to be professional athletes. We and you don't live the same way that these guys do. If you have an opportunity to go train in an NBA program, that's something that is a dream come true for these guys. Also, Trevor, I disagree with your point. There's no way that the G League ever surpasses the NCAA, because think about the greatest moments in the NCAA over the past years. It hasn't been these top-tier premier guys, the Zion Williamsons, the R.J. Barretts, the 5-stars of the world. It's been these young or these veteran players, right, that have stayed in the programs over the course of the years. The NCAA is now just going to be forced to do what should have been doing this entire time, which is developing athletes that are not ready for the NBA. But if you're ready for the NBA, hell, go make the leap to the NBA through the G League Pathway program. This is ideal. This is what should have been happening this entire time.
But I think people seek out quality. And if you consciously know that all the Zion Williamsons, the R.J. Barretts are elsewhere playing in the G League, which it certainly looks like it's trending, that most of the best players, most of the number one overall recruits are going to be in the G League now, then you're going to shift and you're going to want to watch that. We're going to see an explosion in popularity in the G League, just like there's popularity in academy teams in Europe for soccer teams.
Yeah, but they won't always have the money to afford those players. So regardless, they'll still be paying attention to the NCAA athletes too, because financially you can't just always afford the best guys. That's the way it is.
But they're going to have to change. And the NCAA is going to have to allow compensation or player endorsements, I think, to compete with the G League going down the line. Because right now, like, if I was a high school recruit and I was the number one recruit in the nation and I had two options, going to classes when I really wanted to be focused on making it to the NBA because I'm the number one overall recruit and I need to capitalize on that, capitalize on my earning potential, or take $500,000, the option to take a college scholarship later down the line, I feel like that's a no-brainer. And I feel like you're seeing a lot of people see these two options and go with the G League option for those reasons.
Of course, Trevor. But my point is that there's a world where both things can exist, right? Because when you're a 5-star guy, of course, you're going to go take the money and go practice basketball. But if I'm a 3-star guy and I don't have that same opportunity, say I'm Ja Morant, right? I go to Murray State and I create that platform for myself. I still become a star, but I just needed that time to develop my game. There's a world where both of these things can exist, and they're both going to have their respective spaces. But what the NCAA tried to do is they tried to capitalize on it both spaces at the same time, which was unfair to the athletes. I think this is perfect.
Well, I think if the NCAA adopted some of what the G League was doing, which I think we'll see happen, then you could get the best of both worlds. You could get the best players in the country still playing at UNC.
They were too greedy to do that, though.
You could have March Madness be a showcase of the best young basketball players in the world and develop the Obi Toppins and develop the Ja Morants. I think the NCAA should and be willing to be able to do both.
They just haven't been. That's the thing. If it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. They're clearly too greedy to try to make that happen. Anything they do past this point is just trying to regain some of the power that they previously had.
We'll see. Certainly interesting. I don't think anyone viewed the G League as a threat just a couple of years ago when they first announced their player pathway program, and now more and more guys are making that decision. Not good for college coaches. They've got to be sweating over this, especially Mick Cronin at UCLA. I doubt Coach K at Duke is excited about this. But we'll see what ends up happening, how this ends up developing, if it becomes a viable secondary league for the NBA. But right now, let's get to the kitchen where we're serving up our hot takes. It's a fan favorite segment, how we like to close the show here. I'm going to kick things off. Mine is related to The Last Dance, the the Chicago Bulls documentary that's been going on ESPN. Very excellent, by the way. And my hot take related to this show is that I think in the social media era, the Chicago Bulls would have been half as successful. So cut those 6 rings in half. I think social media amplifies every chemistry issue, every team-wide issue that you have. I think about the Kevin Durant, Draymond Green fight a couple years ago during a game that blew up on social media. That laid the groundwork for KD leaving the Warriors. I think Dennis Rodman's 48-hour trip to Vegas would have been blown up all over social media. Guys would have been feuding with each other. You would have seen more ego issues with guys trying to protect their brands. So I think the Bulls were lucky that they played just kind of before the advent of social media. Thoughts?
I think this would have an effect on their success. I'm sure MJ would get the same amount of rings today as he got in the past. But I think what it would have done is made it extremely hard for them with their celebrity status because, as we know, social media increases your reach to people. MJ is this huge figure, and we've seen the documentary how huge he actually was. And social media would have made it a lot harder for him, for sure. Definitely would have affected his personal life, made it a lot less private, even though it wasn't very private in the first place. But I think same thing, again, Dennis Rodman, it would have definitely drove him to this icon status that he was, but made it even more amplified. And I just think that would have definitely skewed with their heads a little bit, but I don't think it would have affected their talent and play on the court.
I mean, I definitely think that social media is distracting. And so in that sense, it could have pulled away from their focus on the court. However, I also think that some of their issues and more behavior characteristics that they had also could have been put in check by social media. I mean, how many times have we all second guessed something that we were going to do that maybe would not have shined as brightly on us because of the presence of social media? Had they had that back then maybe you wouldn't have seen as many of those issues.
When we think about Michael Jordan, obviously he's the greatest of all time, but he also had the luxury of being on the team of the greatest coach of all time in my eyes, Phil Jackson, right? And the reason that Phil Jackson is such a great coach is not just because, triangle and all the schematic things that he could accomplish, but it was also because he was so great at balancing such big personalities, right? And he did that in an era where, because of social media, to your point, Tyler, guys were, able to go out and move freely without having to worry about people tracking their every move. And so that might have encouraged a little bit more of miscellaneous activity, let's call it. But I think Phil Jackson was just so apt at balancing the Dennis Rodmans, the Michael Jordans, the Scottie Pippens of the world that, I don't think it would have been an issue at all. That team at its core, it was a basketball team. Every one of them, despite all the things they did off the court, they all came back to the basketball court as a team. They played exceptionally well. They still would have won 6 championships.
Yeah, I just think it's tough. In today's era in the NBA, guys can never turn their persona off. The Chicago Bulls back in the day, they handle their press conference, answer questions to the media, then they get to go home and be yourselves. You can't really do that anymore. That brings up so many more issues of ego and distractions like we're talking about. I think it would have had a serious impact. I think the Warriors could have won more rings in an era without social media and all the distractions and infighting that come with it. All right, Tyler, let's get to your hot take. What are you serving up today?
Well, Trev, I know you are the king of postponement. However, my hot take is actually that the NFL skips the preseason in an effort to extend training camp and kind of those off-season programs that I think right now they really need. Right now is a critical time for teams, especially with new coaches and developing new players. I don't think the preseason is really necessary. So I would not be surprised if the NFL season starts officially with the regular season in September.
Yeah, I like that. They call me the king of postponement, or postpone Malone, with how much I want these sports to be delayed. And I'm all for that, Tyler. I was never a big fan of preseason to begin with. I think it's a little bit unnecessary, puts veteran players on the line, risk injury. So I'd be fine if it got postponed, also for safety reasons regarding the coronavirus. So I'm in full agreement with you there, Tyler.
See, the thing with the preseason, right? I know it's not something that a lot of people enjoy. Personally, myself, I don't even enjoy the preseason right now. It feels like a waste of time to watch, but for the coaches, from their standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to evaluate these guys in a game setting, right? You don't get to evaluate your second, third, fourth stringers in a game setting unless it's within the context of the preseason. For that reason, I don't think the preseason is going anywhere. I'd like the idea of not having a preseason just as a fan, but from a practical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to keep it.
But I think practicality, you would rather have more time to prepare than to throw your team into the fire, so to speak.
I think given the circumstance of this year, it just makes more sense to go into the season and maybe have a prolonged camp, a prolonged time, just immersing the new players and the coaches all together and practicing in that setting and not doing in the preseason setting where most of the time these big guys don't play anyway. You're just seeing, it seems boring and useless in my opinion. So I think it's not necessary, especially given the circumstance.
I mean, that's the point, right? Is that the big guys don't play. If I'm a coach, right, you're not just evaluating the 22 guys that are going to ultimately start for you. You have to build a roster that's going to sustain
the
success.
Dynamic. You need to see
the dynamic. But also, and that's the issue with preseason. And I think that's the biggest thing that everybody hates is why are star players not playing? And I think the biggest issue we especially saw this last season is that some of the star players weren't playing. Then they'd get injured within like the first week or second week or weren't producing big enough numbers. And so I think you would much rather spend time preparing for the safety and the physicality, that aspect, but also the chemistry. Just get away with it and start with the regular season.
And having these star guys practice with the rookies, especially, I mean, if we go back to the Michael Pittman argument earlier, if you want, again, a Phillip Rivers to practice with someone like him in the preseason.
He would have played in preseason anyways.
Yeah, I think you can get those practice reps over the course of practice, over the course of training camp. I feel like the most important thing right now is just get to the regular season games. We don't need to be wasting time with preseason. Like, we need to rush to the season, give everyone some sports back. I hope fans are there in attendance, but we already had that discussion. Let's have another discussion. Let's move on to you, Julia. What are you cooking up in the kitchen today?
All right, I'm going back to The Last Dance over here because I'm enjoying it as well as you guys are too. But I have to say that Dennis Rodman is the greatest defender of all time, if that documentary didn't also prove it. I know he's known for his antics off the court, his style, his crazy personality, and often that clouds his talent. But I think a defender and rebounder of his class is extremely hard to find. He could turn teams into those championship contenders because of his defense, especially how he could guard small point guards like Gary Payton and then big guys like Shaq. I mean, even on his stats, 7 times first team all defense, 5-time champion, and 2 times defensive player of the year. I just think he really is the greatest of all time.
I agree that he is the greatest rebounder of all time. I love the part of the documentary when he was talking about all the different angles that he rebounds the ball off. He knew which angle it was going to go based on how the shot came off. Then I was like, it set in for me like, oh God, this guy's actually a genius. But I don't think he's anywhere close to the best defender of all time. And that's because he played in an era where he could rely on physicality. And even when he let a guy get to the hoop, he could just push him down. Like we saw that in the documentary when he played for the Pistons. This guy was aggressive, physical, stuff that wouldn't fly in today's NBA. Today's NBA, the most important things are footwork, speed, quickness. Kawhi Leonard, that makes him the greatest defender of all time because he doesn't rely on pushing and shoving. Shut down LeBron James in the Miami Heat when he was just 22 years old in his 3rd year in the league, ended up being finals MVP in that series, led the Raptors to an NBA title on the back of his defense. I think he's the best modern defender, and that makes him the greatest defender of all time.
I'm not even sure Dennis Rodman was the best defender on his own team. And that's not to discount how great he was, but the fact that you had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen helping you out defensively, taking on some of those bigger challenges, I think that helped him out a lot in that respect. So I agree with you, Trevor. I think he was definitely more renowned as a rebounder than he was as a defender. When we talk about the greatest defender of all time, why are we not talking about the big dudes, right? I mean, the guys who can protect the rim, Dikembe Mutombo, Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal, those guys have every bit of great defensive capabilities as the guy who can guard on the perimeter, arguably more so because ultimately the objective of basketball is to get the ball inside of the rim. If you're apt at protecting that rim, then to me, you're a more valuable defender than someone who can defend on the perimeter.
Don't tell that to analytics nerds. I think they wouldn't like that one. They think everything's played behind the 3-point line now. Tyler, any thoughts on this debate?
I'm still on episode 1. But Julia, would you have still had the same outlook had you not watched this documentary yet?
I mean, definitely not, because I think this documentary has shed so much light on this era that obviously I wasn't alive during. Excuse my dog back there. But I think that definitely shed some light for me and really made me interested in learning more about these guys' careers. But I think Dennis has the best defense.
Your dog doesn't like your take.
Yeah. What takes your dog throwing out right now? He seems to be fire back. What's your dog's name?
Brady.
Brady?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I'm not a Brady fan, though.
Does he cheat too?
Does he cheat? He's actually so
also
sweet.
planning on moving to Tampa Bay.
Right? I don't know. He's
We'll
still
see.
going.
Yep. Great take there, Julia. And thanks for Brady for chiming in. He wasn't as much of a fan, but I agree with you there, especially about Last Dance. It's great to get some context for these guys that we've heard so many stories about. Even if you don't like it as a documentary, at the very least, it's the greatest cut highlight reel of Michael Jordan highlights. So I've really enjoyed watching it. But Reagan, let's get to your hot take. What do you got?
All right, man. I got my wide receiver gloves on right now. Shout out to Mickey, because I'm talking about wide receivers. I'm talking about the 2020 class versus the 2021 class that might be even better than this historic 2020 class that we saw. Granted, I know Jefferson, I know CeeDee Lamb, I know Jerry Jeudy, I know Henry Ruggs. All those guys are immensely talented in their own right. But what about Jamar Chase? What about Devontae Smith? What about Justin Ross? These guys are just as talented, if not more so. These guys, a lot of them are playing on the same team as those guys were in the past. But I think those guys might be even better. I didn't even mention the dude out of Purdue, Rondale Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. This class is so talented, it might even surpass the 2020 class, which is wild to say as an evaluator of wide receivers because that class is so good. But, man, does this 2021 class have a lot of talent.
I like that.
I think we saw an incredible wide receiver class this year, but I think it was also, you look at the timing of things. A lot of teams needed wide receivers this year, and so they were able to get picked up and pulled. And I don't know if the opportunity will be there next year. That sometimes it might be, maybe we'll see some wide receivers shift the way they play this season, so that way they can have a better shot in the NFL next year.
It'll be interesting, too, to see if, the season were delayed or even canceled, how that would impact these guys' draft stocks. Always bringing it back to postponement. But, I disagree with you there, Reagan. I think that this caliber of receivers we had in the 2020 class, potentially 3 or 4 Hall of Famers in CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy. And while the 2021 class may actually be deeper overall than the 2020 class, I don't think you're seeing as much top-heavy talent. I think Jamar Chase is right up there with Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb, but I don't see anyone else. Justin Ross, great player, more on the level of a second-round pick. Rondale Moore, fantastic athlete, maybe the fastest player in this upcoming draft class, maybe the hardest to tackle in terms of quickness and elusiveness, but he's also 5'8". Then you're talking about KJ Hamler kind of range going in the second round. So I think the 2020 class takes the 2021 class might be deeper.
How tall is Tyreek Hill again?
5'10",
he's about 5'8" too, right? And let me tell you, the name of the game, and you brought it up, I appreciate that, is speed. And that's what this class has a whole lot of outside of the top tier talent. There's a whole lot of speed. You talked about Rondale Moore. Let me also bring up Jalen Waddle, dude out of Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. Those dudes are like world-class track athlete caliber fast with the route running ability.
In terms of complete receivers, though, I think Jamar Chase is the only one up there with a Jerry Jeudy or a CeeDee.
Justin Ross is a complete receiver.
No, when I watched him at Clemson, he was very similar to T. Higgins in my mind. A little one-dimensional jump ball receiver. I don't see him making guys miss in the open field.
He doesn't have to. The dude, he plays a lot with his strength. He plays.
When you're talking about a complete receiver, that's what Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb bring, right? These guys, they can go up and make the grab. They have great route running, and they can make people miss in the open field. I don't think there's anyone of that caliber in this upcoming class except Jamar Chase from LSU.
Oh, man.
A little disagreement there. Fitting, though, symbolic even that you got the last hot take since you're going to be the one carrying forward this show as a freshman. Many more hot takes to come. But for me, Julia, Tyler, this is our last ever time on Sports Scene, our last time covering USC sports. So, guys, real quick, what's been your favorite memory covering USC sports? We'll start with Tyler.
I would have to say just the relationships I've made with the athletes, with the coaches, and with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, getting to be sports director and then come back and be able to host the show. I mean, it's just not you're hosting today, but just becoming an anchor has just been an incredible opportunity covering Sam Darnold's years. It's been amazing.
You've really done it all. You managed to do it all here at Annenberg. I've got to go with the USC-Texas game. I covered it as a sophomore, got to stand on the sideline for the last 10 minutes and 2 overtimes between Vince Young and Matthew McConaughey. So even though I'm not a Texas fan, hard to top that. But thank you guys so much for all you've done for Annenberg over the last 4 years. Tyler, I know you've only been here for a year, but you've still managed to pack in 4 years of work into that 1 year. So thank you so much for all you guys do. It was a pleasure to be a part of your last ever sports scene. And Reagan, make sure to carry it forward, my dude.
I got y'all, man. I got y'all.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in to the spring season finale of Sports Scene. We'll be back during the summer, so not the last time you're going to hear from us. But until then, goodbye, stay safe and healthy, and have a good rest of the semester if you're a USC student. See you next time.